Idris, and you're watching The Future is Female, the show where we find the extraordinary in every woman. Now, today on the show, we're going to be looking at Malaysia's discriminatory citizenship laws and its impact to Malaysian families. What you just saw was a video as part of a campaign, and I have got two guests here with me to tell us a little bit more about this campaign for equal citizenship. Josiah, who is a gender expert with the Malaysian Campaign for Equal Citizenship, as well as Seri Kempe, who's the program manager at Musawa, which is a global movement for equality and justice in Muslim families. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Melisa.
Thank you for being on the show. So, Ivy, can you kick it off with telling us a little bit about the video that we saw, which is part of this campaign?
Right, yeah. So the video that you just saw is from a woman who's obviously a mother who's living overseas. So what we did was for this particular campaign called the Malaysian Campaign for Equal Citizenship, which is led by the Foreign Spouses Support Group.
Okay.
So the campaign is trying to visibilize mothers. To make sure that the mothers become the advocates, because there are many mothers living overseas and also in Malaysia who are stuck simply because they cannot confer citizenship to their children. So if your child is born overseas and your husband happens to be a foreigner, a foreign spouse, you cannot go to the embassy and just register. You have to apply, and the tedious application process can be terrible.
Okay.
So the campaign is really about visibilizing these stories, the processes, and why we cannot rely on processes. What we need to do is change the constitution.
Just to get the foundations right. So Malaysian mothers who have foreign spouses who give birth to children overseas cannot confer their citizenship to their children.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yes.
But Malaysian fathers who marry foreign spouses
overseas
and have children overseas are able to do this.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if that Malaysian mother married to a foreign spouse and gave birth in Malaysia, that's not a problem.
Okay.
But the but if she's born overseas, if the mother gives birth overseas for various reasons, she could be a student, she could be working there, she couldn't fly back, it's also expensive to come flying back to give birth. All she's saying is, if the Malaysian man can confer citizenship, why can't I?
Okay. So these discriminatory laws clearly have an impact to families, mothers and children with no citizenship. Suri, this is a personal story of yours. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yes, so I was married to an American citizen, and that marriage took place when I was doing my master's in the States. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl when I was there, and when she was about 4 months old, we decided to come back. But before we even decided to come back, during my pregnancy, I was familiar with the fact that this might be a problem, conferring citizenship to. So I wanted to make sure, knowing that I was in the midst of my master's, I couldn't simply take off and run back and say, I want to give birth at home and then I'll come back and finish my master's. And, financially, that just wasn't an option. And so I had called the embassy, the Malaysian embassy in the States. And I called them and I said, hey, I know that some of this is an issue. Can you please tell me procedurally what I need to do in order to make sure that this is smooth, this goes smoothly?
Okay, so you did your homework, right?
I did my homework.
Proactive, just being proactive.
Before the daughter was born.
Yes.
And you said, what do I need to do to make sure that there are no hiccups for her to get Malaysian citizenship? And then what happened?
And they were like, oh, this is not a problem. Just, if you're going to go back to Malaysia, even easier, within 6 months, you just register your the birth, and that's it. And then she will get citizenship like every other person. I was just like, oh, so easy. Okay.
So that allayed some fears. Okay.
That allayed some fears. And then I went home after 4 months after she was born, and we got back there. And then I went to JPN, Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara. And they were like, oh, tapi puan, you have to apply. Oh, boleh je puan, you have to apply. Like everybody else. Like every foreign citizen, you have to apply for your daughter's citizenship. Yes.
For your children,
For your children.
But you're a Malaysian citizen.
That's right, right? Exactly. So this is the inherent discriminatory aspect of the law. And you're just like, I don't understand why this law is still in place now. It's 20, at that point, it was 2008. I was like, why?
Yeah, because those days, when this constitution was being formed in the colonial days, the expectation was that the mothers or the women follow their husbands. But today, women, we are studying overseas, we are working overseas, there are international marriages, you know, and somehow the geography, the fact that you've given birth overseas cannot then say, and therefore we're going to discriminate. And what is really, really painful is that Malaysian fathers can get away with it.
Right.
And we're not saying take it away from them. I think we all want to be.
I mean, it should be
know,
a right, but it should be a right that should be extended to women as
and
well.
Article 8 of the Federal Constitution is very clear. We had a huge win in 2001 when we said Article 8, you cannot, you know, discriminate women on the basis of gender
What
or
is
anyone.
Article 8?
Basically, Article 8 is on equality.
Okay.
Right? So in Article 8 says, what are the grounds for discrimination? You know, you cannot discriminate a person on race, ethnicity, you know, place, movement, and we inserted the word gender in 2001. That was a huge win for the women's movement, particularly the Joint Action Group for Gender Equality. So we said, okay, fine, that's great. So of course we expected all the other articles in the Constitution to reflect the spirit of Article 8, right? But it has not happened. So we believe that just like the Undi 18 constitutional change, this is a lower fruit.
Okay.
We can really do it because every minister we met, every MP we meet, all say, yes, of course, it's only fair.
Right.
Malaysian mothers should be equal to Malaysian fathers. These are our children. These are Malaysian children.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether they're born in Pakistan, in Timbuktu, or in, you know, or Singapore.
It's geography,
yes,
isn't it? It's like where they're born is just geography.
That's the thinking, Melissa.
Right.
The thinking is, you are overseas, you just take on, your children should just take on your father's citizenship, and, you know, and carry on.
Right.
Don't come back. And when the children come back, they're on different lines, special visits, special visas, and
Right.
so on.
You know, the interesting thing is it's not even in line with what we want to achieve as a country,
That's
right?
right, yeah.
I mean, we want more women in the workforce.
Right. We want our talents,
Yes,
right?
we want
Yeah.
our talents
To come
recognized.
back,
We
yeah.
want, exactly. My sister, for example, is in the same situation. She's married to a foreigner, but is a specialist, she's a doctor. She's a specialist in rheumatology. Wants to come back,
Right.
has come back, in fact, you know, brought her 2 sons, but is having problems with the citizenship application.
But you must tell the story of how finally Zuli got.
Okay, so
Yes,
yes,
citizenship.
I'm so curious to know. So you were, you know, made to apply for citizenship
So I
for your daughter.
applied for citizenship.
Did she get it?
So the first round, they called me in. So part of the application process for citizenship is they call you in for an interview. So I went in, took her out of school, which is what you have to do because child has to come along. Took her out of kindergarten. I took my day off work, drove all the way to Putrajaya, sat down, had the interview, and you know, she gets asked why she wants this citizenship. How do we know she's going to be raised Malaysian? And when are you going to get divorced? I'm like, what? What does that have to do, whether I get divorced or not,
Right.
what does that have to do with
Her citizenship. Right.
application? Or that is one of the requirements, or it will impact your application. I'm just like, really? What other preconditions are there that, like, you know, that are required of me? And they were like, oh, we can't tell you that because then you might go out and try and fulfill all of these requirements.
But that's the point.
It's really
That's the point,
ridiculous,
right?
isn't it?
You wanted to
And there
fulfill all
are
those
so many
requirements.
stories like this, you know. They get rejections, they don't even know why they're getting rejected.
soon after,
and
yeah.
always questioning loyalty.
Yeah.
Are you going to be loyal to Malaysia?
So soon after,
Yes.
then the application got rejected, and I was furious. I was like, I have been going through this up and down to interviews, this, that, and the other for like a good year, right?
Oh, wow.
Like up and down, this, that, and the other, following up, calling, this, you know, and it takes a lot of effort, time, and commitment, right?
Sure.
And it's an important thing, so of course I do it. But then you get rejected without even the courtesy of like a why. Why, on what basis was she rejected? On what basis, if I reapply, what do I need to fix in the application to make sure that I don't have to go through this 10 million times?
Okay.
So, so at that point, you know, I tweeted, like there was an ongoing case with a Malaysian man who had been unable to confer citizenship to his child. He happened to be Sarawakian, and I kind of piggybacked on that issue. And
That was a similar issue as well.
right,
okay.
and I was like, I don't understand why Sarawakian men have the same problem as Malaysian women who aren't able to confer citizenship on their children. And then I happened to tag then Home Affairs Minister Datuk Sri Syamuddin, right? To my surprise, he responded and was like, oh, Puan, that shouldn't be an issue, you know, like, and
Right.
went on to tag his head of immigration.
Okay.
And I was like, Well then.
So this worked for you, but not every mother.
Not everybody can tweet.
Yeah, not everyone can tweet or will have the attention accorded to them. You know,
Right.
and what I didn't realize essentially was that at the moment only the Home Minister has the discretion to confer.
Yes,
Right?
JPN, the registration department falls under that
The
domain,
Home
right?
Ministry,
The Home
okay.
Affairs
Melissa, to be fair, there has been a recent announcement by the Ministry of Home Affairs to
Right,
say
I saw
they're going
that.
to streamline and they're going to make sure the procedures are a bit
Review
more
it,
clear.
yes.
But you see, that's not good. That's not the solution. That's not the permanent solution.
You don't
'Cause
think so, Ivy? It's not enough?
Not at all, because
Okay.
we need to change the law to recognize, first of all, that Malaysian mothers can confer citizenship to their children wherever they are born.
Okay.
Of course, they can do it when you're born in Malaysia, but especially so when it's born
Because-
overseas.
because-
Once that is done, then everything will follow through properly. Not there's different procedures.
You know, sorry, but the funny thing is, right, there has been a policy amendment, or at least an administrative amendment,
On
right,
guard-
remember?
on guardianship,
So, in 2010, I believe, Datuk Sri Shamsuddin had announced that the government recognized that this was a problem,
Okay.
and that they were going to make an administrative amendment, meaning procedurally, at least, the government would facilitate the application of citizenships and make it easier on mothers who had children born abroad who married to foreigners. So, but of course, that doesn't filter
doesn't
down to the
Okay.
ministries,
Alright.
to the.
So it's really about implementation of that kind of policy guideline.
This goes back to Ivy's point, right?
About the spirit of the Constitution must recognize it by law, and also just to give you an understanding that when a Malaysian father goes to an embassy in Germany and so he says, my child is born, let me register it, he will get the papers and what have you, this birth certificate or birth certificate of the children sorted out with anything between 3 days to a few weeks.
So it's the process for the father is.
It's more an informing.
It's very
it's
straightforward.
straightforward.
It's almost as they make it easy for the father.
And because you're informing the Malaysian government, you
I've had a
now have
baby.
a new Malaysian citizen.
So, sorry, when this happened to you, did it make you feel like a second-class citizen?
Oh,
Like your
absolutely.
rights were not as valid as a male Malaysian's rights?
Absolutely, I was furious, and on top of that, I resented the fact that I had to jump through hoops to register my daughter. Like, because I'm a Malaysian citizen, I want to give back to my country. I love my country. That's
Exactly.
why I want to be here. I want to give back. Why do I have to jump through hoops to make sure my daughter is able to do the same thing?
Yeah, I think that people are missing the point of that these are Malaysian mothers who just want their children to be Malaysian. And yes, it's the same thing as the father. Like a father would confer the citizenship to the children, and the child may choose a different citizenship at the age of 18. That's left up to the children. But we want to give our children the choice of Malaysian or whatever other citizenship. And interestingly enough, in my own experience, it's not scientific, a lot of mothers want to come back. A lot of Malaysian women want to come back.
Anecdotally, right?
Now, we'll come back
yes.
and discuss about that and what's holding these mothers back and the processes that can change in the future. We'll continue our conversation right here on The Future's Female. Make sure you stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Future's Female. I'm Melisa Idris. I've got Ivy, Josiah and Seri Kempe here with me from the Malaysian Campaign for Equal Citizenship. Now, just before the break, we're talking about how it's actually really easy for fathers to go and, register.
Notify the embassy.
Yeah, and it's completely the opposite for mothers trying to confer their citizenship to their children born overseas. At the heart of the problem is the fact that the Malaysian Federal Constitution doesn't recognize mothers as equal parents in the eyes of the law as fathers, right? Because there's no mention of Malaysian
It just says
mothers.
father. It just says father.
Okay.
What we want is to kick the word father out.
Right.
Of course, we appreciate fathers. Drop the father and put in parents one at least who is a Malaysian.
Okay.
That's it. parents
to
want
make
at
it
least
equal,
Yeah.
to
right?
make it equal. That's it's very, very simple. And as I said, many maybe
you say
not
it's very, very simple, but this means amending the federal constitution.
well, we
Is it
changed
as
the
simple?
government
But it
after
is-
61 years. We can do it. We don't have to wait for
But
another
it's such
61
a,
years.
it's such a common, like, it almost seems like such a common sense issue. Like, a lot of people can't believe that women are still not equal in the eyes of the law, especially
Yeah.
as mothers,
People are
right?
shocked.
So it could be a cross-partisan issue. There should be
Right.
enough support
Excellent point, yes.
across the board
Exactly.
to push this forward. Why make it a party issue? Why make it a partisan issue when it is such a basic right that everyone, regardless of whichever party they're in,
and you know
should
what
Can you
else?
think of anyone who would be opposed to this?
I can't really.
So why is it that we don't have the political will for it? It seems like such an easy win.
I think it's that whole notion that, when it comes to women and family, when it comes to, women are still facing a lot of discrimination when it comes to the family issues. The father is the head, he's the guardian, he's the leader, and somehow women have to follow. So even though when you corner a person to say, yes, of course it's right, but there's all this unconscious bias, right, that somehow, oh, come on, just follow your husband. Just stay in Sri Lanka. No, I may want to come back to Malaysia. And sometimes his mothers are living in these foreign countries, refusing to go and get a passport, a French passport or a Pakistani passport or a German passport or an Australian passport, because they really want the child to become Malaysian, right? And they're so afraid if they were to get citizenship for the children in another country, that somehow they're going to lose out on the chance. As I said before, women come back home. I was saying how quite a number of times they come back home. And it's not about love of Malaysia alone. It's also because as women, we are brought up to believe that we must look after our family and our parents. And so all these stories, my neighbor, she came back to look after her mother. And she had every 2 to 3 months had to keep running out of the country to come back so that her children can stay on a special visit pass.
Right.
They wouldn't even give her a year's
Not
pass.
everyone has that kind of financial.
It's financial,
liberty,
but it's
right?
also
Yeah.
stressful.
Very
On
burdensome.
social
And
visit
unity.
passes.
And also unity, because your husband is sitting and working elsewhere. Maybe the husband also wants to come back and be living in Malaysia and look after the family too. So,
Ivy, can I just add this, the mental stress, the emotional stress you go
Yes.
through every time you pass through immigration.
Right.
So
Yes.
you're on a long-term social visit pass or a social visit pass where every 3 months you need to cross the border, come back in.
yeah.
If you come back, sometimes you get troubled by immigration
Yes.
officers when
Yes,
you
that's
go
true.
out and you come in, say that same day, because you don't want to stay the night. Staying
Right.
the night means additional cost,
money,
right?
yes, that's
so
right.
you want to come back that evening. Oh, why are you just crossing in
exactly.
and out?
Right.
You should be applying for a long-term visa. Sekali dua boleh buat puan, tapi lepas tu dah tak boleh buat lagi. And it's so...
Subjecting
And it's
yourself to that
subjective.
kind.
You know what?
Yep, okay.
I've decided it's
so
battering.
stressful.
It's actually a form of battering. The system is battering these women
Well,
back mentally, because
the system
it's,
makes it so difficult for women and makes it so much easier for men.
Right, yeah.
So what essentially you're trying to do is change the federal constitution to recognize
Yeah.
that women are equal to men in the eyes, as parents in the eyes of the law.
parents, one at least.
One at least.
Who's a
Okay.
Malaysian. That's
All right.
it. Simple.
So this campaign is about equal citizenship.
That's right.
What do you guys need to make this happen, to be able to change
Well,
the law?
the good news is that we are getting the support of the Ministry of Women and Family
Okay,
Development.
so the government
yes,
has responded
they
to
has.
this. Okay.
In fact, we met up with Dr. Wan Aziza 2 days ago as the Minister of Women. She was saying, yes, that makes sense. Of course, it's only fair that women are equal to men as being equal fathers and mothers. The Deputy Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, YB Hannah Yeo, is going to come for the forum. She's going to meet about 25
There's
mothers.
a forum? There's going to be a forum?
That's on the 18th, on Thursday in Petaling Jaya.
Where?
And
Do we-
in the
you wanna mention where?
Armada Hotel. but
Like,
what
quick.
I'm excited about is it's not going to be the usual activists going on and on. It's going to be not going on and on, but advocating. But we are visibilizing the mothers. There are going to be 25 mothers who have gathered there, taken time off from work and what have you, to gather there so that they also become the voice. We've got an amazing video that we're going to launch, which again captures the stories and with Marina Mahathir calling for an appeal, because Marina's firstborn was actually born in Japan.
Oh, wow.
So she knows from experience
How
that
difficult
how
it is.
difficult
this
it was.
is
yes.
the daughter of the current Prime Minister, then Prime Minister.
At that time also
At that time.
Prime Minister.
So, I mean, if this is something that, I guess, Seri, you also, in your case, was very lucky to have had attention from the
It's a
Home
freak.
Minister.
It
It's a
was
freak case. It's
it was a
a
freak,
freak.
like accident
But
occurrence.
There
Good
are so
accident,
many,
yeah.
many mothers who may not have had the opportunity to bring their case up and highlight it.
Exactly. It
So
was
there's
an
forums for that.
abnormality, and it shouldn't be.
It starts with a
should-
forum, and then it will continue with the Ministry of Home Affairs cooperating and buying this idea, and I'm sure they will, to actually changing the constitution. So they have to give instructions to the Attorney Generals, to the AGC,
Okay.
to the chambers to say, okay, bring about a reform, table it in cabinet, we bring it to Parliament, but meanwhile, the women's groups, the Foreign Spouses Support Group, and the Joint Action Group for Gender Equality, we'll do our work. We'll go and speak to every MP, opposition,
Okay, educate them about this
educate
issue,
them,
okay.
get their buy-in so that we can have this amazing moment in Parliament, like we had for Undi 18,
Undi 18, yes, that's right.
and have another change and bring about, to further and to really uphold and recognize that, yes, Malaysian men are equal to Malaysian women, and Malaysian women are equal to Malaysian men. That we're equal. Simple as that.
Right. It's going to be a long process, though, right?
Of course it will be
I
a
mean,
long
this is not
process.
something that will happen overnight. So in the short term, you have a promise from the Home Ministry that they are going to review the SOPs.
The
They're gonna
SOPs,
shorten
yes.
the time with a waiting period for, citizenship application. But the long game is to have the Constitution amended to recognize
In Parliament, yeah.
that citizenship should be equal for
Yeah,
both.
to change Article 14, to amend Article 14.
Okay.
But we can start with that. Of course, there are many other pieces of discrimination in the federal constitution, but let's start with this.
Baby
okay?
steps, right? We'll start with bit by bit. Okay, that's really interesting. I guess in the time that we have left, I'd like you to, for our audience, help us understand the problem. I mean, in the way that perhaps it's more personal, that there are other women out there, other families and mothers who are going through this. What are some of the stories that you've heard and that you want people to know about the difficulties of this issue? It feels like it's such a low-hanging fruit for the government to address, but no one seems to want to champion this. I mean,
It
talk about
absolutely
it.
is. You're right. It absolutely is. I think the lowest hanging fruit. Like, can you imagine someone saying, "No, mothers shouldn't be"? No, they absolutely should. And one of the families, one of the mothers that we interviewed, that we spoke to, had actually said, she had wanted to come back because she was looking after her, because her father was critically ill.
Okay.
And she had had 2 children. Her spouse is of refugee status, and they were currently then at that point living in France. So she, of course, she wanted to come back and see her critically ill father. Her oldest son had Malaysian citizenship. Second one had just been born or recently been born. So she brought him back in the hopes of obtaining a Malaysian
She was
passport,
issued a travel document by the Malaysian embassy
saying
in
the
France.
holder of this document is a Malaysian citizen, and therefore
An emergency passport to
Okay,
travel.
right.
Because
Okay,
her
all right.
Because the
father,
father-
Father
unfortunately,
was critically ill.
and
Okay.
eventually passed away, right? So
she
carry
brought
on.
back both sons, and then went to go apply for the passport, and then was told, "No, when you have to apply for citizenship first." So she was like, "Oh, this is a little strange. The document says." In any case, so she did, and that was how long ago? And so she's been in
Oh,
the
it takes
country.
many, many years for this, right?
Oh,
The thing is,
gosh.
we don't know, because usually when you submit the application the first time around, it usually gets rejected. And when you ask, I remember asking the officer at the ministry, why is this common to get the biasa lah puan? This is normal. If you're really keen on getting Malaysian citizenship, you'll apply again. So we use it as a
like
way
a test.
to vet.
Oh, this is the loyalty
This
Yes,
is
this
the
is
story
the
that's
loyalty
repeated.
test, yeah?
2-3 years and rejections 3 times. Just recently, 2 days
Do they
ago.
tell you why you rejected?
So you
No,
only find
no.
out, the process takes about
doesn't.
4 years, to find out whether or not you get it.
Okay.
So in the midst of all of this, because the husband is of refugee status, the children have obviously one child has no passport now. In the meantime, so they're separated from the father, she's separated from her husband,
Okay.
which is really absolutely tragic and completely unnecessary. It doesn't need to be this way. Ivy, do you want to share anything?
No, I was going to know about the stories that consistently that
Yeah,
there's
so these
rejection,
are
rejection,
types
rejection.
of the stories that we'll hear at
And
the forum.
and
All right.
we don't know. I mean, we haven't done enough of a study to see if there's any pattern. It seems to be, it doesn't matter where you're applying from, whether it's an Asian country or a Western country. The consistency is that I have a foreign husband, my children have a foreign father, but they have to look at the fact that it's a Malaysian mother.
Exactly.
The Malaysian mother simply wants to make sure that her children are Malaysian citizens.
Okay.
We don't have to go further than that. We don't have to start saying, who's the husband? What's the motivation? Is she loyal?
It should be enough, right?
why
That the
she's
mother
Malaysian.
is Malaysian.
Or in cases of,
be
or in
enough.
cases of divorce, then you can come back. No,
Understood.
why do we have all these conditions when it comes to women? That means it just shows that you really are treating women in a very, well, I don't,
Different
I
way than you
can't,
have
not
the
only
men.
different, it's discriminatory, it's demeaning.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really happy about is that we've got the buy-in from the Ministry of Women and Family Development. Next, we're going to target the Ministry of Home Affairs. I hear that they are also very reasonable people.
Okay,
So
there
we're
you
going to
go.
do this. Suspicious
All right,
good luck,
so
right?
you've got a strategy in place. I wish you all the
Yes.
best.
Thank you.
And this is something to consider. Our citizenship, equal citizenship, just with Malaysia Day around the corner. It really
Yes,
means
it's
a lot for
appointment,
us.
right? Yes.
What we are as Malaysians, right? Okay, that's all the time we
Absolutely.
have on The Future is Female. I'm Melisa Idris. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Melissa.
I'll be back same time next week. I'll catch you then.